You're listening to the Full-Time Function Musician Podcast, the #1 resource for growing your function musician business. If you're a solo wedding singer, part of a 12-piece luxury show band, or anything in between, and want to learn from other successful musicians, you're in the right place.
You're listening to the Full-Time Function Musician Podcast. My name is Jack and I am your host for this podcast. I am super excited to have you here. This podcast is all about helping you grow and manage your function musician business. Each week I sit down with an amazing guest to discuss what's worked for them, what hasn't, and the valuable lessons that they've learned along the way. And then together we'll explore how to build a successful business without burning out in the process. So today, just quickly before we get into today's episode, we are very close to the end of season 2 now, and I plan to be back with season 3 at the start of July. If you would like to come on to the podcast and share your story, or if there's a particular subject that you'd like to discuss, or even if you just know someone that might be a good fit, then please get in touch, as I will still be recording episodes for season 3. So you can email me or just reach out on Instagram if you would like to come on. All those links are in the episode description. That's it for my little intro for this one. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Josh Nesbitt and Serge Fagelman. You're listening to the Full-Time Function Musician Podcast, and on today's episode, I'm super excited to be joined by premier wedding and event pianist Josh Nesbitt and international Jewish singer and performer Serge Fagelman. Guys, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having us on.
Thanks for having us.
I'm really excited for this episode. Josh got in touch with me on Instagram with a really interesting episode idea, which is just to go into the kind of niche that you guys have found, which is the Jewish event industry. Is that a good name for it, I suppose? And we're going to talk a little bit about how you've managed to solidify yourselves in that and sort of really start killing it as well, because I know you guys are really busy with it as well. And I know, Serge, you haven't been doing it that long, which is also really interesting. So just to kick things off, I'd love to know a little bit about your backstories, kind of where you got started, and I guess how you guys came together as well.
Cool.
Sure. Josh, do you want to go?
Do you want me to go first? Okay.
Yeah.
So in terms of just my life story, my musical career, I started playing piano by ear when I was about 5 years old. My parents got me a little keyboard, then had the knack for it, and just ran with it. Was playing piano as a kid, entertaining. I was doing that as a kid and all of that. And when I was about 14 or 15, I think I was doing a gig with a singer. I think it was a charity concert, and I was approached by somebody who I still know today to play at their engagement party and their wedding. And I thought the woman was like joking, because I was like 15, but I literally looked about 9 years old. It was ridiculous. So I did that. So basically through my teens, I was doing gigs for like things in synagogues, with all the different Jewish singers. I'd be doing solo piano, like little like medleys of mashups of things, and like kind of virtuoso style. So that was really cool. When I got to 18 years old, I went to music college. I got accepted to the Royal Birmingham Conservatoire to study classical piano. So I studied that for 4 years. And as a kid, my parents took me on a cruise, and I always wanted to work on a cruise as a pianist. So as soon as I graduated, my first job out of music college, I became like the resident pianist on a lot of nice cruise lines, playing piano in the piano bar, taking requests, getting a real name for myself on the ship, kind of almost like not like a mini celebrity, but like, really known and respected. And that was great. And also just going back, when I was at uni, I would come back. This is important to mention. When I was at music college, I'd be coming back nearly every weekend to do a chuppah ceremony, a Jewish wedding ceremony with one of the singers, or to do a concert, or to do a party. And then I'd get the train back up for Monday morning to have my piano lesson again. So that was kind of crazy, back and forth from Birmingham. Back to the cruise thing. Sorry to go back and forth.
No, that's all right.
My first job was working on a cruise line, and I did that on and off up until COVID. And then the pandemic kind of shut everything off. Mm-hmm. I then, as restrictions eased, I started working in the hotels, in the London hotels, sort of doing that circuit, doing solo piano around the hotels, which was great. In fact, very similar to you've had Nicole on. We basically did the same kind of circuit together. So that was
right. Do you know her or? Nice.
We pass each other work and stuff,
Yeah.
and we do the same gigs. So, in fact, that was how I heard of your podcast.
Right.
She shared it on Instagram, and I was like, "That's wicked." And then I've just been binge watching all of them. They're freaking brilliant. So, I love that. Originally, when I was at music college, I wanted to study. When I was at music college, my dream was on leaving college was to like get a job as like keys one in one of the West End shows. That's what I dreamed of through my teens. That's what I really wanted. COVID came. I was going to do a master's in conducting and all of this. COVID came along, and and then through the pandemic, I wasn't really doing anything apart from gigging on Zoom and things like that, like we all had to do. And then I had a bit of an epiphany, because when sort of June, July 21, everything came back, and there was all the backlog of all the weddings that were cancelled, and people were like, "Oh, it's going to be in 3 months. We just don't know if Boris is going to allow it," and then it would be pushed back again. But I had this massive backlog of weddings. So in July and 21, June, July, August, September 21, I just had this, like, it was crazy, because all the ones that were supposed to be through the year and a half, I was doing it then and doing really well and loving it. And I had this epiphany. I was sort of sat down with a drink with my brother at home one night, and I just remember this as vividly as day. And I was like having like a quarter life crisis, really, saying like, what do I do with my life? I don't know what I'm doing. What am I doing with my music career? Man, I don't know what to do. And he just sort of turned around and said, "Mate, like, look at your Instagram. What did you do today? What did you do yesterday?" And it was like, "Josh, you're already doing it. You're known in the Jewish industry as the pianist, the keys player. Like, you are the one. Why would you want to try and like go off piste and try and do something that it's so tough to get into, and so many people are trying to get into, and maybe not doing it." And he was just like, "Whatever you're doing, you're like phenomenal at. Why don't you keep doing and getting even better at, and just be the best that you can at doing your niche. And if you do that, you'll find success." So after that, then I kind of just changed my whole marketing and branding around myself, rather than like so classical, which was what I was kind of trained through music college to be, despite my background being more pop and more commercial. But going through music college, it kind of changed my whole mentality. My whole website was like very classical. It was very like academic. I just changed everything and just ran with this. And I like to think that I found success. Yeah. So that's kind of my background. I hope it wasn't too long.
Not at all, man. Not at all.
It's thorough.
So yeah, Serge, how about you?
So I'll try and keep mine to less than kind of 20 seconds. So
this is a podcast, man. We want to hear the story.
Yeah, man. So I don't want to bore everyone. But basically, I started singing when I was a kid. Naturally, kind of obviously, thought I had a decent voice, and so did others apparently. And I through school, I would have singing lessons, and then I carried on after school. I started attending Royal Northern College of Music after school for one-to-one lessons with singing teachers, including Jeff Lawton, who's unfortunately no longer alive anymore. Jeff was an amazing singing teacher. He was understudy to Placido Domingo in a couple of operas around the world. So I really kind of had some amazing teachers along the time. And I always sang as a kid in the synagogue, the Jewish synagogue. Obviously, I'm Jewish, so kind of synagogue singing or church singing, per se, was always quite prevalent in my life. And I was a choir boy, I think I sang in the choir for about 15 years as a kid. And then I guess kind of natural progression from that was into getting into chuppahs. We call it chuppahs or ceremony singing. And to be honest, I kind of fell into it because I never actually went into being a full, doing this as a career per se. I actually work in software. I still work in software.
Yeah.
So I do have I say a day job, but I do have another side of my life, which is stoked in software. And then, this kind of came as kind of a passion of love, really. And I did a friend of mine approached me. It was the second time getting married, and he was like, "Listen, I'm getting married for a second time. I don't have much money. Will you sing at my wedding?" And I was just kidding. He's one of my best friends. So I was like, "Of course I will. It's fine." So I kind of sang at his wedding, and my wife put some clips out on Facebook of me performing at the wedding, and I had people messaging me asking me what my rates were. And I was like, I don't have any rates. So I kind of fell into it, to be honest, and it all kind of stemmed from there. My wife was just like, why don't you do this as like a, side hustle? You don't do anything with your voice, anymore. Obviously I'd finished with the choir at that time. I was no longer a kid, and I thought to myself, what, she's right. I really, this is what I love doing. This is what I was kind of feel like I was born to do. I really enjoy it, and Josh and I, we live, breathe, and eat this industry. This is literally our, we live it every day. We really live it and we love it. And I started from there, and since then I've kind of built on it and built on it and built on it. And thank God. This year's really busy. We have about 30 weddings in the diary, which is great. It's going to be a really good year.
Yeah, I mean, how do you manage that as well as a full-time job? And do you have any ambitions to not have a full-time job and make this your full-time job, or are you happy keeping it as a side hustle?
Yeah, I think for me, I always kind of want to keep it as a side hustle. I don't want to. I don't want to ever feel pressured to kind of think like, oh no, where's my next gig coming from, and and all that. I just don't want to. I don't want to ever be in that situation, because I think I'd then start resenting it and kind of losing the love for it. Like, I really do it because I really love doing it, and I love to make it special. But I don't think I ever want to kind of lose that spark that I have for it. So I think if I ever made it a full-time thing, then I think it could become quite pressurizing, and I don't think I want to be in that position. So I think I'll keep it as a side thing, and it's something I love doing, and keep it for the weekends.
I mean, Josh, you could probably answer that. Like, what's your experience with? Is it more pressure, and does it make you lose a bit of love for it? Or
it's it's like being freelance session musicians. It comes in waves.
Yeah,
I'm quite lucky that I still do the cruises. So like in dry spells, I'll go like for a month, maybe two. I mean, years ago when I started, it would be like on my whole year, like I'd be like 5-6 months maybe. But now it's just short, and then back for wedding season, then it goes a bit dry. We also, the problem with the Jewish industry is that, I was talking to Serge about this last night, is that there's only really 30 weeks where you can have events, because when you think of, there are Jewish holidays where you can't have events, because it's a Jewish holiday, and you can't have them on the Saturday because that's the Sabbath. So they're always on a Sunday. Maybe you get it on a Monday, maybe Thursday, but the bulk of it is Sundays. Yeah. So every Sunday we're usually out, and if you're not out on a Sunday, you're like, geez, what's wrong? Unless it's a holiday. And there are also 3 weeks, there's a period of 3 weeks where we're not allowed to have events between two major holidays, which is actually coming up. So we're having a great March, and then April, it's Passover, and then it's like, that's a shame till May. I mean, I'm lucky that I've got the cruises, and I've got my non-Jewish stuff and my regular corporate and just non-Jewish functions. But my bulk of my volume just comes from the Jewish stuff. That's my network, and that's what I'm marketed as, and that's what I'm known as and niched as.
I think it's interesting, Josh. Yeah, I think you mentioned there's 52 weeks in the year, and out of those 52 weeks, there's maybe, as you said, maybe 30 odd weeks where you could probably have a Jewish wedding, because, as you said, the rest of them are taken up by either Jewish festivals where you're not allowed to have a wedding, or as you mentioned, the 3 weeks, and then within that we have another one called the 9 days. So there's periods of time where you're not allowed to have a wedding. So
are there other events though that aren't weddings that you can perform at, or is it just kind of weddings that you do?
Yeah, I mean, you could perform at certain Jewish festivals where electricity is allowed, but that does tend to be the more usually religious like religious gigs that would come up. And I mean, I don't really, I mean, I'm not marketing myself towards the more religious Jewish crowd. I would say I'm more kind of a secular, more gearing myself towards more the secular crowd. Josh too. I would say, but he is obviously starting to also be able to offer that service to that market as well. I guess for me personally, because as I said, it's not a full-time thing for me. I do like the ability that I can kind of like cherry pick the stuff that I kind of want to do and don't want to do. Which I quite like. And I can turn gigs down and stuff like that if I'm, for example, going on holiday with my family or whatever. I do like having that freedom, if that makes sense. Josh is absolutely spot on with, said you probably about 30 weeks in the year where you can have a wedding. So I mean, Josh is this year. I know Josh is exceptionally busy. It's going to be a good year.
Yeah. Yes, you like Serge, you've got to that sort of point where everyone kind of wants to get to, where because you've got that like secure income coming in from your day job, that you can pick and choose the gigs that you want to do and charge more, I'm sure, as well, and not be worried if people say no. And that's kind of where you get a lot of freedom, when you're not worried about people saying no.
Yeah, I guess a lot of it comes down to also I guess my background is in business. I'm not, as I said, I've not kind of been brought up as a full-time musician, but I've always learned, I guess selling, full-time, in terms of selling, whatever product you're selling. You can't sell based on price. You can never sell based on price. If you're getting into a price, kind of a Dutch auction where, he's charging this and you're charging that and all that, you're just going to end up with a race to the bottom. So you got to really find a way to differentiate yourself and make yourself different and, really kind of sell the value of what you're bringing to people's weddings, over what other people might be bringing. And again, it's really kind of defining that and, showing to the customer, marketing yourself, in that way, to ensure that you're not into a price, price war. People
somebody who's really big in our industry, like Massive, who owns one of the biggest show bands like in the UK. Apparently, he made a comment saying, like, Serge has been doing it. He's just sort of popped up out of nowhere, and already he is in the highest. Like me and him both are in the highest echelon, like the most upmarket, like most expensive weddings, the best venues with the best suppliers. Like, and with other of his peers, might take him 10 years to get there. They'll be doing like the smaller jobs at the cinemas, the synagogues, and then like mid-range venues, and then maybe get up to like your Groves and your Dorchesters and your Savoys. But like Serge is kind of like within the first year he was there. Like, man.
I mean, yeah, and I definitely want to dive into how you managed to do that. But first of all, how did your paths cross? How did you guys meet?
Go on, Serge.
So I actually reached out to Josh because, I mean, obviously me being kind of new into the industry, I really kind of, wanted to get myself in with the right people, the right suppliers, the right people in the musical space. And Josh, was always, every time I looked on Instagram, he was the pianist for other of my peers, that work in the same space.
Yeah.
So obviously, naturally, you're like, well, who is this guy? And obviously, watching some of his videos, I was like, wow, this guy can play. And again, I played with a lot of pianists over the years, but no one, and I really mean no one, plays like Josh, especially at Jewish weddings. Josh is a real expert and maestro at really kind of understanding the Jewish experience, the Jewish really kind of, really has a real understanding of the requirements and being able to really kind of understand the dynamic of what's going on at certain times within the ceremony, and knows how to really kind of make it a very what word did I use yesterday, Joshua? What's called experience? A real kind of immersive experience.
We were doing sound check yesterday, and the sound guy, we were running our ears and all of that, and like, keys all right, yeah, this violin all right. And then he goes, is it meant to be that loud? And we're like, yeah, it's not like sort of a gentle piano going like, da, 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 da. Like it's like we want our subs. In our rider, we want our subs, and we want the satellite speakers, and we want that sound to just boom. And if you've got a nice room, like yesterday, the sound, shout out to Jay from Musical Movements there, the sound was banging, and like you play better, don't you, Serge? Like
naturally, of course. When the sound
Serge is incredible anyway. His voice just booms. But with the sound, like when you do like a wedding outside, and it's like the sound just kind of gets lost in the space. But when you play in a beautiful venue with beautiful acoustics, and then good sound technicians that know what they're doing, like you play to it, and you play 1,000 times better.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is a whole 4D experience. We want you to feel it in the stomach, which you do. And like it was a mixed wedding yesterday, so the bride converted to Judaism, and so half of the guests weren't Jewish, and they were just coming up to us like, we've never seen anything in our freaking life.
This podcast is sponsored by my business, In Focus Recording Company. At In Focus, we specialize in creating exciting cinematic show reels for professional function musicians. We also offer photo shoots and custom logo design, helping you bring all your branding together into one cohesive package. Whether you're a solo artist or part of a 12-piece luxury show band, having standout promo material and strong branding is essential to growing your business and booking more gigs. If you're interested in checking out some of our work and learning more, head over to infocusrecordingcompany.co.uk. So, I mean, I feel like let's talk a little bit about how you've managed to grow this so quickly, then, Serge. So it sounds like you started off by reaching out to people that you saw were doing well, and just sort of trying to make connections that way.
Yeah, I guess for me, like obviously I was new to the space, and obviously I wanted to kind of, get in with the right people and try and find people that would give me an opportunity and whatever. And, I wanted to, at this point, obviously make a big shout out to Jason Silver from Sensation Band. Jason was one of the first show bands that, really gave me the time of day, and really kind of spent a lot of time with me. He had me around to his house, and, we spent a lot of time together, and his advice of, Jason and the Sensation Band, they're one of the top bands in the UK in terms of show bands, especially in the Jewish space, and also, other spaces and corporate spaces. Jason spent a lot of time with me, and offered me a lot of advice, and I owe a lot of. I'm really grateful to Jason for giving me his time and his advice, over the years, and giving me the opportunity to perform with them as well, to give me, my first kind of step on the ladder. So, I guess for me it was getting in with the right people, but not just getting with any people. Like I knew where I wanted to head in terms of kind of where I wanted to be, place myself in the market. And I know that I needed to play in that, in the arena with those people, with the other suppliers to then, to give me that chance to get in there. So if I know I wanted to operate in a kind of a quite high end environment, then I need to work with the high end bands. So I need to, work my way into, I guess, working with them. So yeah, as I said, big shout out to Jason, and, thankfully it's kind of snowballed from there. And, obviously I now work with a lot of the other UK show bands, which is great. And yeah, as I said, Josh also, a great listener and a great person to offer advice as well, in the industry. He's been doing a lot longer than I have. And, it's been a really crazy few years for me.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I think what you're describing there is really what a lot of people don't do, but it's actually a really smart idea, is really thinking about the end goal and where you want to see yourself, and then kind of working it back about how do I get there, rather than taking it step by step.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. I think I come from the business environment, so for me, I think of what like OKRs and key performance indicators of where you want to. Yeah. As you said, you think about the end goal, and then you think, well, how do I get to that end goal? And exactly what you've just said. That's exactly which was kind of my kind of ethos in terms of how I was going to play it. I wanted to get in with the right people, but I also knew that if I wanted to get in with the right people, then I needed to have have something to show for it. So like for me, like what was also really important was the content that I was going to put out there. The content that I was going to release, had to be really high quality content.
And Jack understands that because that's literally your business, isn't it, Jack?
Yeah.
Well, exactly. And I guess for me, like, the high quality content thing was really important. I often see, Instagram, you see a lot of bands or singers, whatever, they put out, raw content, and everything is raw content, and raw content is fine. I think raw content really kind of shows, shows a person, but, I do feel like you need to have a mix of both. To really kind of, to make the cog work and to really kind of pull people in. You can't have everything as professional content because then it doesn't look like, it's a bit like, you buy something on Temu, you saw it online and then what it actually looks like was completely different. So you do need to be able to, prove without post-production and whatever that you are the performer that you say you are, but then also, you do need to have, good quality content as well.
Yeah, I think it's important to have, there's a time and place for different types of content, isn't there? And
exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's talk a little bit about your social medias, both of you, and how much of a role they do play in this niche.
With my social media, people just say I post all the time. I don't do as many posts as I should because, I'll tell you why, it's because let's say I do a gig and I get someone to do a video or a photo of me and it just like, it looks a bit crap. Like my feed has to be really beautiful and look nice.
Yeah.
So I tend to just, every gig I do, I stick a story up.
But that's exactly what, it's exactly what we're saying though, is there's time and place for those types of content, isn't there? And I feel like a story is the perfect place for something that's a bit rougher.
Show people that you're working.
Yeah, exactly.
But like, I don't do as many posts as I don't do as many like high quality content as I can. Often like, cause if I'm doing a chuppah with him, I'm performing, I'm kind of more of a session.
Sorry, just for the people who aren't Jewish, a chuppah is a Jewish ceremony.
Yes, sorry, chuppah, Jewish ceremony.
Is that a wedding ceremony or?
Yeah,
yes.
A Jewish wedding ceremony. Yeah.
Right.
Chuppah actually means canopy because it's like under a canopy.
Right.
Right.
So basically, often Serge will actually ask. This is actually a good tip. If you're at a wedding, get friends with the videographers and then afterwards reach out and see if they can send you stuff. Sometimes they need to ask the bride and the groom and all of that. But often the camera is mainly on him under the chuppah canopy. So I'm often not in it. But I will bring, like I did yesterday, I'll have my phone and I'll have a tripod and I'll have like a keys cam. So I did that yesterday. So I've got some stuff to get out so that people can see how I sound and how I look from where I'm sitting, which is kind of a cool POV. But what Serge will do with his content is that instead of going into a studio and doing like a really kind of contrived, kind of sterile thing in like like you would for a promo, everything is live. So it's this hybrid of you're there, but it's a beautifully produced video because it's from the official videographers that cost a bomb. And then he'll get a multi-track recording through the desk, and then you send it off to be mastered, don't you, Serge?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Well, you do it yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the way I work, so just in terms of, I guess, my background again, my background was marketing. So I'm kind of a bit of a whiz on a computer. I use Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign. I do video editing, so I can do, use Premiere. I can use Final Cut Pro. So for me to have those skills in house does really benefit me as well. So I can't do musical. I can't do music editing or post production or anything like that. So that element does need to be farmed out, and does cost obviously to get done. But the rest of it, in terms of I guess obviously I can't perform and film at the same time, so I do have to hire someone to come and film. But then I can just take that footage from them directly on the day or whatever, and and then do all the video editing myself. So I don't actually need to rely on anybody else to do that. And again, don't have to pay for that. Apart from obviously pay with my time. Obviously, time is still a cost. I guess. Sorry, what were we talking about? We were talking about social media feeds, right?
Yeah.
So I guess for me, I guess social media is massive. It's my key playground, and I guess for me, what I think. As a marketeer, is I have to think, where are my clients playing? Where are they? Where are my clients on a day-to-day basis? What social media do they use, and which groups are they in, and what are they doing? So like most of my clients are kind of young, newly married, engaged couples. And I guess the industry has kind of flipped somewhat, because it used to be, I would say, like the parents of the couples that would book either the wedding band or the wedding singer or whatever. Now it's kind of flipped, and a lot of it, the families, the mother and dad, mum and dad don't usually book these things anymore. They kind of leave it to their kids to do.
Yeah.
So I guess for me, I think, well, where are these young couples hanging around? And they're hanging around on Instagram and TikTok and things that they're using day to day. So those are the places where I as a singer need to be, and then need to be operating. And so I guess from a marketing point of view, when I'm putting out new videos and whatever, new promotions or whatever, I use Instagram to really kind of promote my stuff and create kind of a marketing strategy around Instagram per se, because that's where most of my business comes from. Obviously, it does still come from my website as well. It's important to have a good website, and a website that reflects who you are and what you look like, and and in terms of it looking professional and whatever else, and having good keywords so that you do rank on Google and whatever. People are going to be using Google to search. In terms of most of my abroad weddings, to be fair, have been contracted through Google.
Really?
As opposed to kind of London weddings or UK weddings, which tend to be more through Instagram or word of mouth, because the Jewish space is a very small space. It really is very. I don't want to use the word incestuous, but it's very like everyone knows each other. Like literally, you're literally one person from knowing the next person.
It's a bit like the function circuit, really. Like we were talking, we were in the band room yesterday on the gig that we did, and it's like, who do you know? You look on someone's Instagram, there's like 50 mutual friends, isn't there? So just like,
yeah, exactly. No, how do you know them? Oh, we work together with this band. Oh, yeah, I know them. Oh, do you know that person? Oh, yeah. And there's all of that.
And they'll talk about their stories, like when they were on tour with them and this and that happened. It's like, music life.
Yeah.
Music life.
Exactly. So, like, I guess for me, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, I just think about where my customers are situated, and then I gear my content towards that.
Yeah. I think, the key thing that you've mentioned there is that you know who your audience are. And because you know that, it's much easier to try and find them online.
Of course.
So Josh, how about yours? What kind of role does it play for you?
I think personally it's important. I think it's important for my own stuff where I'm booked as, like, for non-Jewish, just regular weddings where I'm booked as Josh Nesbitt, the pianist, solo, rather than playing as someone's keys player for somebody else, because it's your business. Also, my website and my show reels are important. Like for the cruises and the corporate, like all your high-end agents that are booking your nice big corporates and privates, they how it is, they need your nice promos, which I have. I could do with a new one, but that's another conversation, Jack. So less as a role, I genuinely think it's less as a role, because my volume comes from people like Serge, people like singers like Johnny Turgle, who I owe a lot to because he got me into this industry. So shout out to Johnny Turgle, and bands where they'll book you because you're a session musician. But I think Serge will agree. Like I think the tricky part in my marketing has been, like, I'm kind of this tightrope between being am I someone's accompanist, or am I still Josh Nesbitt as Josh Nesbitt? I think I'm bigged up by Serge that I'm here as my own artist as well as just as a random keys player. Like he said to me, I'm 50% of it. So I'm walking this tightrope where I'm marketing and brand myself for myself as Josh Nesbitt for the non-Jewish stuff, or for Jewish events where they want a pianist, they don't want a singer, right? Yeah. And then as being an accompanist, I think that's my tricky sticking point. Where am I placing myself? And I think maybe I should experiment with the website doing the heavy lifting for my solo stuff, and and the Instagram doing the accompanying, or vice versa. Serge, what do you reckon? I think it's an important thing.
I think it's an interesting conversation. I think Josh is probably doing himself a bit of a disservice, to be honest. I think as Josh knows, yesterday when people, after the ceremony, were coming up to us saying how wonderful the music was or whatever, and me specifically, I always turn to Josh and say, I'm only 50% of the
I said
the bargain here. Josh is is the other 50%, and people say, you guys work so well together, and I think as I said, I feel like Josh is doing himself a disservice because he enhances. We talked about the sound and having good sound company and good sound engineer and whatever, but equally having the right team around you to create this amazing immersive experience. There's, as I've said it earlier, no one plays at a Jewish ceremony like Josh does. No one. And I've performed with a lot of keys players, but the way Josh just knows how to he just reads the ceremony. He reads when to put in little anecdotal plays where he Josh, you give an example of, like, for example, like we have a part in the ceremony where the bride and groom take a sip of wine. And usually it can be quite an awkward silence at that moment in time.
You're just watching people drink wine, so it's like
So Josh underscores it. He underscores it with a
theme,
with a bit of a track.
The track that the bride walked down, so that I remember that theme. It's kind of like taking from maybe the musical theatre background, because I treat it like a theatrical experience. It's almost like I wait for the rabbi to say a certain cue word. It's like, I imagine I'm the conductor in the West End, right? And you're or it's you're in a film scoring stage and you're waiting for that cue, that hit point, and then this musical idea happens, and then people go, "Oh, it hits you. It gives you that." Yeah. That. So I actually think, immersive experience, but building on that, because maybe coming full circle to when I was saying about musical theatre and my love of the theatre of that space. It's like theatre. It's like opera. So, yeah.
It really is.
In operas, you have what's called leitmotifs, which is like a theme for each character. Like in Les Mis, the Javert theme, Fontine's theme is I Dreamed a Dream, or Eponine is On My Own, and those themes are just woven through the whole score. So I will do that in the chuppah.
It's a really good way of explaining it.
Yeah.
Exactly that.
Leitmotifs, that's a new one. LEITM.
So, I mean, just to kind of sum up, I feel like then your marketing strategy is really through networking with singers and things like that. That's where
my strategy
a lot of your...
is reaching I think my that's a lot of my's. My most effective way of getting new leads is just literally doing the rounds, reaching out to bands, reaching out to show bands, reaching out to singers, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we see, like we know that you exist, but you kind of just have to remind you that you exist, and you actually want to work with them." Like, there's this string group that I work with quite a lot, Halo Strings, and I just reached out to Lydia and I was just like, "Hey, do you want to actually, because we've been on a gig together, but I'm like, if you want to use me." And she's like, "I didn't know you were interested in working with other people." I'm like, "Well, no shit, I'm a full-time musician. I work with anyone." So sometimes you just have to tell people that you want to work with them. Like, they don't always assume. I don't know, maybe people are intimidated. I don't know. But for me, it's reaching out and networking. Jam nights is good for the more band stuff and the session side stuff, but also planners. Loads of Serge's business might come through planners, for your high-end planners as well.
Yeah.
So.
I definitely think the plans market is an interesting one. I've got to be careful with the choice of words that I use here to discuss the whole kind of planning space. But listen, planners are a key part of any wedding, and making sure that you have a good relationship with all planners is important. And also, sometimes you can have a good commercial agreement with them. If they recommend you, they get some kind of commission or whatever, which is the way the planning space works, and that's fine. There's no dirty word in sales. Sales is not a dirty word. at the end of the day, that's what we all are. Don't care what anyone says. Whilst we may be musicians, we're also salespeople.
We're selling a service.
We're selling a service. We're selling a product. And if you can find different go-to-market, channels, whether that's through a planner, whether that's through social media, whether it's through this and that and the other,
or if you're like me and it comes through your singer and you're the
absolutely
go-to.
Exactly. Yeah. Also, Josh's go-to-market channel, one of them will be through the singers. So, and me and Josh often have a good laugh about it because sometimes he'll be performing with me. Sometimes he'll be performing. He mentioned before Johnny Turgle, another fantastic singer. And other singers in the market. And Josh, I guess Josh has the final laugh because he works with them all. So, if I don't win the gig and Johnny wins the gig or somebody else wins the gig over me,
I get an inquiry for the same day. Like, are you free the 31st of March? Oh, that's funny. What venue is that? Oh, Stopwell House. Oh, literally just got asked for that before. So it's like they're both selling me. I mean, they've got the inquiry through. They need to find the keys player, present it to the client, and then they choose. But it's nice because the thing is, though,
it always ends up in Josh's lap.
You can't.
Josh is the common denominator. He's the one that wins. We're the schmucks that are fighting around for business, and Josh is the one that's kind of standing back with his arms folded, waiting to see what the outcome is.
The only annoying thing is that you can only be in one place at once, and on a Sunday, on what we call Chuppah Day, they're always at the same time. I mean, sometimes you'll have two town venues, like, I don't know, the Biltmore and, I don't know, Claridge's,
the Londoner,
the Intercontinental, and you could skedaddle after doing the ceremony and running to another. But most of the time, you don't know the timings until really far down the line, like a week before. You can't take on two, not really. That's the annoying thing. So you have to charge accordingly, like a day rate. You think, well, I have a ceiling of how much I can earn on a Sunday, which is our big day, and you think I can only take on one, so this has got to be kind of worth your time.
Yeah,
it's a good point, Josh, especially in our space. I guess also for me,
it's something with a band.
I wanted to also touch upon when I joined this space, this Jewish ceremony, this Jewish wedding space. I kind of came into a market which was pretty not closed, but singers, other ceremony singers, wouldn't talk to each other. It was very kind of like, us, me versus them, and that kind of thing. And I guess I wasn't quite used to that. So for me, I've been reaching out to other ceremony singers, and I guess they weren't as forthcoming as I thought they would be. And I never quite understood it. And I was like, well, why? And for me, I guess what I've tried to achieve in the last few years of doing this is to create more of a collaborative approach to this, because at the end of the day, as Josh said, you can only be in one place at one time, and there tends to be on a Sunday, as we call it, Chuppah Day or wedding day or whatever, there tends to be 4 or 5, 6 weddings going on at any one time.
And in Manchester, where you come from, in Manchester, you there's only usually one on a Sunday, right? Which is why you can either take a Manchester job or you could come down to London and join me.
Yeah, exactly. So either I'd be working in Manchester or London, but I guess for me, as I just wanted to just circle back to the previous point, as I came into this industry where people weren't quite speaking to each other, and I actually approached other ceremony singers and I said, guys, it doesn't need to be like this. We can actually all work together here, and we can help each other out. So different singers will get inquiries for days that they're already booked on. And if they're already booked, recommend somebody else in the space. We can all help each other. So I've passed work to Johnny Turgle's passed work back to me. I've passed work to other singers and they pass work back to me. So I've tried to try and change this kind of I'm not recommending anybody else because they also are a singer. But as I mentioned, you can only be in one place at one time. We can all help each other. We can all win here. We don't need to be, pitted against each other, so that's something that I've really tried to kind of work on as well.
I think one of the things that I love about Serge is
that also, sorry, just final kind of thing. Because that is also another go-to-market strategy.
Yeah,
it's a go-to-market strategy that is probably slightly out of the norm. It's not working with a wedding planner or using Instagram or using keywords. It's another strategy of getting business is through through competitors, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
It's through other singers who can't do that day because they are already on a job, and they can recommend you to others. So it's about finding those opportunities. Sorry, Josh, go on. You were saying.
Serge is an excellent connector of people. I think that comes from, he is a real socialite. I mean, when I see him work a room, I mean, you can tell he's a salesman, but he's phenomenal. I mean, he's just got this knack, but he's also an excellent connector of people. Like, if he doesn't connect, he'll connect people that are like on a different industry to music or whatever, and he'll see someone at a party and he'll connect them. He connected me with this band that I'm now working with, the MW Show Band, and we're launching that together. He put me in touch with different singers or different, and he wants people to succeed. He wants other people around him to succeed. It's never a case of it's a conflict of interest, or I don't want that, or I'm protecting this. It's like, I sang to him the other day because there was a wedding where they booked me. There was a chuppah that they booked me just to play the piano. And originally the rabbi was going to do it. But then the rabbi was like, oh, do you know what? I'd rather you do it. Like, you can sing, mate. And I did it. And I was like sending it to Serge. And I was a bit like imposter syndrome because he's the singer. Like, he can sing. He got pipes. And he was just like so supportive. Like, he could have been like, no, don't do it. It's my territory.
Yeah.
What do you want me to do? Do you want me to play the piano? It's like, no, like Serge isn't about that. And I really, really appreciate and respect that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, there's a book, it's called The Go-Giver. I don't know if you guys have read it, but it's having that go-giver mentality of like, there's enough work for everyone here. And if we're all being nice to each other, and
it says that all the time.
It's definitely a good book if anyone wants to go and read that.
I just think that you should, if you've got a giver's mentality and you're just a giver and a giver and a giver and a giver, naturally you will receive.
Yeah.
But you don't go into it thinking you're going to receive. You just go into it because you're naturally a giving person. I like to think, I am a giving person, and I like to just not just give in terms of, money or business or whatever. Just like even in terms of time, giving people, the time of day and having a conversation with them, even for some advice or whatever. It's you never know where that you never know firstly what that'll do for that person. But I guess in return, if you did want to look at that, you never know. I'm a big believer also in like karma or good juju or whatever you want to call it. I'm a big believer in if you do the right things, and the man above will look after you as well.
Yeah. So just because we are moving towards the end of the episode here, is there anything else you guys want to cover on this niche?
Maybe Serge might want to mention, like, because one part is the chuppah, and then there's basically, do you want to just talk like 2 minutes about just the simcha set and what that involves? Yeah,
it's interesting to talk about just the bands that operate in the Jewish space. Mm-hmm. So like we have typically Jewish weddings typically go one of two directions. You either go full show band, so they have a show band performing on the night, which is usually kind of a minimum kind of 7-8 piece show band, upwards, and then you've got also a DJ live if clients want more of a kind of a clubby style, party style. Exactly. So it just kind of depends what the client's looking for, really. And there is a number of operators that operate in the space, and I guess they're all also at different price points as well. So kind of the top end side, who are operating in the kind of very high end side, you've got the likes of Musica. So Musica kind of lead the industry, as well as the function band. Obviously, many people know the function band because they also operate a lot in the non-Jewish space, whereas Musica, whilst they might do the odd non-Jewish wedding or whatever, their prime market is the Jewish space, whereas the function band, they're doing a lot of like corporate and a lot of
celebrity weddings and things like that,
and non-Jewish weddings and things like that. So I think in terms of kind of amount of weddings, I think the function band probably do. I think they probably lead the way in terms of the amount of weddings. But in terms of kind of price points,
they'll put out 6 bands out a night though.
Correct. Yeah, correct. They put six pounds out a night, so it's it's a lot of weddings and a lot of musical output, and you've got to have a lot of setup for that. But I do think the way the Function Band have actually set up in terms of it's like a DJ live. They do offer a show band, but I guess their primary default product that they put out is a DJ live with a couple of instruments, 4 singers or whatever, and a DJ. It's easily copyable, as in the sense that they can take that model and put it across multiple weddings, because it's an easy product to kind of replicate in terms of the product. So they do that very well. Musica are always kind of live show band. They do have a DJ live.
It's like minimum 12 piece, really, isn't it, with music?
Yeah, correct. But whilst they do have
about 9.
Yeah, Totem also operate in the space, also very high level. Operating at a very firstly high level in terms of number of weddings they do in a year. Led by Brett Warren, who's fantastic person and real mover and shaker in the industry. He works alongside, obviously, their main singer in Totem is Moni Tavoni, who I think was on The Voice. Who's also an amazing singer, but also an amazing person in terms of, I guess, again, offering advice to people. Moni was, I guess, for me as well, a great bearer of advice for me when I first started up in the industry, and he continues to be a great sounding board for me as I kind of progress in the industry as well. So the industry is interesting in terms of show bands and kind of how it works and the different price points and whatever. But yeah, the circuit is pretty much tied up with a number of the show bands in the space. You won't find, often me and Josh will turn up to a wedding, and it's very rare that you'll turn up and not know who the band are.
Or at least the musicians, the singers.
At least the musicians or singers.
Because they can perform with everyone, unless they're on a retainer.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. But yeah, that's typically how it works.
And Serge will offer a package, so he'll do the chuppah ceremony with me, and then he'll do the Jewish first set of Jewish Israeli dancing, won't you?
Right.
Yeah. So I used to just offer the ceremony singing, and then I worked out that I was actually losing gigs to other singers because they were offering the ceremony singing, and then they were also doing the fast. So typically, the way Jewish weddings work, it operates very differently in terms of the actual structure of the wedding to like a typical non-Jewish wedding. So Jewish weddings, bands will play throughout the whole night. They're literally from the moment people are walking into the room to the moment people are leaving. The band are constantly on, or on and off. It's not a like there's a wedding breakfast and the band start at like 9 o'clock and there's a 45-minute set and they're done. Kind of thing. It's
in the room after the drinks reception, and the band are out on the stage singing and playing like kind of like things like "Lovely Day," "Let's Stay Together." All of those kind of groovy soul stuff as they're coming in and setting the room, and then people find their place, and then all of a sudden it just explodes into action. They go, "Please join you on the floor for traditional Jewish dancing," and then the band just explodes into this incredible like horror, doesn't it? And so
it explodes into we call it a Jewish horror, HORA, horror Jewish dancing, which is like a fast tempo Jewish musical set, which is kind of traditional for most Jewish weddings to have at the beginning of the wedding, after the ceremony, once people have come into the dinner. It kind of explodes into that, which is great. So as I said, I was finding I was losing
high energy, and people are throwing each other all over the place, and it's like sweaty. It's like it's madness, and people. It's kind of like our equivalent of like what you have at a Greek wedding, and people like when they go to a Jewish wedding, they're like, "Shit, I've never seen something like that. That is so fun. That's so different. I love it. It's great."
Yeah, so for me, I wanted to offer that as an additional service, as well as offering the ceremony singing, to make sure that I had a kind of more of a whole of market approach per se. So yeah.
Yeah, super interesting. Awesome. Yeah, I'd love to move on to the next part of the show, which is all about some of your good experiences and bad experiences of gigging.
You won't mention anyone.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, up to you, but no names, maybe. Yeah, what have you got for us?
Shall I go first? I think my best gig was probably, well, I've got two. The corporate I did in Saudi with my friend Katie Sharp, violinist. She had a string quartet, and I was on piano for this, like the equivalent of red carpet. It's called the Velvet Carpet. It was the Joy Awards in Riyadh in Saudi, which is kind of like their Oscars, if you like, for the Arab world. And it was just
who was that booked through?
It was Katie.
Oh, okay, it wasn't through Sensation.
Well, Sensation, Katie, me.
Okay.
There were like 5 degrees of separation. Like it was like in Saudi they booked an agent in England that booked Sensation, that booked Katie. I say, yeah, I was quite far down the chain, but that was probably one of the best and bougie gigs I've ever done, and it was televised live on TV, which was wild.
Yeah.
And also the gig that we did in Rome with me and Serge, the massive Jewish wedding we did at Villa Miani, which is this stunning, spectacular venue, like overlooking the old city of Rome. It kind of looks better in the pictures than it does in real life, because in real life, I was really stupid, and I bought this, like, I brought my thick velvet jacket that I would with like dinner jacket that I would normally use for my winter/England gigs, and I was just sweating like it was unbearably hot. But like, no, it was wicked, and like the function band are there playing, and like it was just sick. And the after party was like, wow, they had a DJ and food was amazing. That was cool, wasn't it, Serge?
Yeah, I'll probably echo that. I'd say probably my most favourite gig. I'd say favourite gig. I mean, they're all amazing. They really are all amazing. And yeah. I try not to call them gigs, because I think a wedding is somebody's special day, and I don't want to just pass it off as a gig, because it's not a gig. It's not a gig for me, and obviously it's definitely not a gig for the people getting married. So I don't want to just see it as another wedding or whatever or anything like that. For me, as I said, every wedding is very special in its own right. And I guess obviously, naturally, there's different budgets that cater to different people, and I'm very blessed to have been flown out to lots of different places. More recently, I got flown to Denver, Colorado, which was really cool. We did a wedding there, which was really fun. But then obviously you get to do stuff in Europe and Spain and Italy, and I performed. A couple of highlights for me would be performing at Villa Miani with Josh and Katie. We had an amazing experience there, as Josh said, overlooking the old town of Rome, which was amazing. But then also I got to perform in Venice as well, in the Royal Gardens in Venice, which was amazing. With a big orchestra and whatever. It was quite spectacular. Unfortunately, because they were quite a high profile family, I wasn't able to actually make any content, which is a real shame. But it was an amazing experience. And then, we get to perform in other places like Marbella, which we've done a number of times now. So we're quite, we understand the circuit there quite a bit as well. I would say those are a couple of my highlights in terms of bad experiences. Is that the question? Bad experiences?
Yeah. Or any funny stories, anything like that?
Bad experiences. I think I'm going to keep it more generalized and not actually pick on a specific wedding or whatever. I would say bad experiences for me are when you turn up to a ceremony or whatever, and they're not taking your tech rider or not listening to your tech rider properly. And they've thought what you need, as opposed to actually either looking at the tech rider or actually contacting you and having a conversation about it. And you turned up and for example, I had a wedding where I was performing outside, and they just had these two high tops kind of facing out to the audience. Or the wedding, the wedding guests, and I was stood next to Josh behind the speakers, and I said to the guy, have you got IEMs? And the guy was like, well, there was no requirement for IEMs, and I said, it's in my tech rider. And he said, oh well, I didn't see it, or whatever. I was like, well, do you have any other way of any monitors. No, we have no monitors. I go, well, I'm not being funny as a sound engineer, right? We're performing outside, so it's not as if we're in a room where like the sound reverberates or gets around. Literally, when you sing outside, it disappears. It's not there's no acoustics. So I'm like, so you obviously you need monitors. So yeah, I guess for me, like the most frustrating thing is when, sound engineers or sound companies don't either take the tech rather seriously or they just don't listen at all and just do their own thing.
My worst.
Josh has probably got more colourful ones than I have.
I mean, I did a civil. It was a civil at Uridge Manor. If you've been there, bloody schlep, as we call it, a trek and a half, a horrible journey. Well, it was a last minute gig, so I was in Marrakesh. I booked to go to Marrakesh, and I bought the flights back coming home. Like I put it back a day early so make the gig, whatever. So I get there. I was there well in advance because #professional. So I was setting up. I have a piano shell, by the way, which I use to make my Nord Piano 5. That sounds amazing, but clients want it to look like a grand piano because they're booking a pianist. They want to they have the image of a pianist. So you put it inside and it makes it look like a grand piano. It's white, baby, grand piano shell. It's beautiful, but it is a pain and a half to get it to gigs and to set up, particularly on your own. So I've got it set up and I'm ready to go. Then the strings that I'm working with are turning up, and then we're just running through the set. We were just running through the songs that we're doing. We didn't get any charts, so we're busking it. And then the guests are coming in early, and I hate when the guests are coming early when you're still sound checking. It's like, bro, we're not ready. But anyway, they're coming in, and then this planner, like typical with the clipboard, and like it's going, can you actually start playing because the guests are here? It's like, we're literally turning on our instruments. We're literally like, she's just tuning up with the wires are going in, like they're doing a line check. And it's like, what are you doing? Like, you're bringing them in like half an hour early. Come on, like let us work. Let us do a job. So that wasn't a great taste. They also the planner also cued us doing the wrong entrance and the wrong song. So after the ceremony, they were like livid with us and said, "What did you do?" Like trying to throw us under the bus so that their asses were covered, but if and when the client complained. So that wasn't good. That was really uncomfortable, and that made me on edge. Then the strings went home, but I was playing for the breakfast, for the wedding breakfast. And they did the drink section, I did the breakfast afterwards. So I was set up doing the wedding breakfast, and then I'd driven for 3 hours. I think I had a Costa on the way at like Winchester Services or something like that. And then I'm playing the wedding breakfast. I'd played for an hour already, and then I'm like, well, I'm hungry, so I guess I'm going to take a break now, as you would, as any musician would. So then I just whispered to the planner, I'm just going to take a break now. Where's the band room? Where's the green room? Can I get something to eat? She goes, well, actually, didn't you have you down to have a meal? I said, what do you mean? I had you down to play the piano, not eat. I was like, sorry. I'm not an animal. Like, I'm not going to play this. I've driven for 3 hours from London to freaking Chippenham, and now you're saying I can't eat anything. And then she kind of said, well, I'll find you something. So she reluctantly found me a meal, and then I think she said, oh, and we didn't expense it, so we're going to have to expense the client. So I just sort of stuffed it down my face because I felt like I was going to eat it as a short time as possible and then get back to playing the piano like a good boy. So I did that, and the whole gig was terrible. And then on the way home, I literally turning out the venue, have a very, very bad accident where like the bumpers come off the car. So, because I was in such a... He's laughing. I was crying down the phone.
This is a serious one.
Like, what the fuck do I do? It's like midnight. It's pitch black by the time this had all happened. I was stuck in the middle of like nowhere. There was like no light or anything. Had to get towed at the AA. Cost me $700. I
was on the phone to Josh, like trying to like keep him like sane. Like, obviously, he'd had like a terrible day at this wedding, and then to make it even worse, to add salt to the wounds, he then has this crash as he leaves as well.
I think the crash happened as I put the phone down to you, telling you what had happened. Maybe cut out the bit when I said I'm crying because I look a bit funny. Probably was crying. I'd had a shit day, but yeah.
It was a good day.
And we had a gig together the next day on the Sunday. So I was like saying, Serge, I don't think I'm going to make it back to do our gig together. I'm really sorry. He was like, mate, I'm going to make it happen. I'll sort it. I'll stick you in a cab because you won't have your car. I'll sort it. And Serge was absolutely incredible. Like, yeah, thank you so much again.
Yeah, that's what friends do.
Yeah.
That's good stuff, guys. So yeah, onto our last bit of the show now, the quick fire round. So we're going to go question by question to each of you. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Cool. What is the most effective thing you've done to market yourself or your business?
Ooh, God, that's interesting. Can you go into a bit more detail about what you're asking about that?
No, I'm asking the questions. So I'd say like it's probably going to be an answer about social media. Using social media is the most effective thing that you've done. There you go. I've answered it for you.
I would think so. Social media and finding who your ICP is. You're very clear with who your audience is and making sure that your marketing is geared to that. Don't be too unless you can be. Don't spread yourself too thin. Find something that find the market and just concentrate on that market. Don't try and be all things to all people.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
I think in one of your podcasts, you've quite touched on that with a few of your episodes, which has really resonated with me, Jack.
Yeah,
just the ones on the niche, like the punk singer.
Yeah,
like who would you like? You think, how has she done so well? She's done absolutely incredible when you see how much business she has, and like her feed looks immaculate because she's just honed in like a microscope, like a needle to that tiny niche. No one else is doing it. So everybody just gravitates to her. It falls into her lap.
Just for anyone who has listened to that episode but doesn't follow, that's Lily Kirby. She's booked up for like 3 years in advance now, like completely solid with like 70 weddings a year. Wild.
It's so inspiring.
Yeah.
It's really inspiring.
Cool. Question 2. What have you learned in the last 3 months that you wish you knew 3 years ago? I'm
really good at doing, as well as doing the ceremony, I'm really good at doing like we said, the horror set as well. Like I'm excellent at that. I've got like an arranger keyboard, a Korg arranger keyboard, where you can build arrangements and change them on the fly. A bit like Ableton, but in a keyboard setup. And basically I've been taking on gigs with different singers or just as myself. And in the secular market, like in the really religious Jewish market, it's quite tied up. There's quite a lot of people doing it. But in the like with me and Serge, we've got that little niche. We're in that halfway house. There's not really many people doing it, or not to a good level. So I'm starting to do really well with it. Like it was Serge that suggested doing it. And I was just like, for so long, I was like, oh no, but people perceive me as this kind of pianist. They perceive me as like more classical. They perceive me as this. And I'm like worried to tarnish. But then when you do step out your comfort zone a bit, like you'd be surprised, like it's so much easier. Because again, nobody else is doing it. Goes back to the niche thing. I wish I'd done that a while back. And I think just in general, thinking about the question, in terms of the last 3 years of doing this kind of like, rather than before when I was at uni and at school, the events and the chuppahs was just one of the things that I did kind of passively, but it wasn't the thing that I marketed and kind of owned myself as doing, which it is now and what people see me as. I wish when I was at music college, I was like really focused on just doing this. And like this was what I was going to do as a career, because then I've done well in the last 3 years. But if I started doing that in like 2014, 2015, or just out of uni, I would have been so much further along.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, that's a regret. But at least I'm still young, so we live and learn.
Yeah,
I guess for me, something that I wish I would have learned maybe at the start was, I would say, making sure that you've got all your added services included. Like, for example, like instead of just doing the ceremony, I could have done the ceremony and the Jewish dancing. If I would have done that earlier, maybe I could have had more gigs earlier. I don't know, but that's what I'd say.
Okay, that's good. What is the biggest mistake that you've made, and what did you learn from it?
Biggest mistake, I'd say, probably goes just saying that. Not focusing on this, because at one time in your life you think you want something, but it's not really the right thing, and it's okay to change and be brave and to change. Like I said at the beginning, I really wanted to work in the West End Theatre. That wasn't going to happen, but I was already doing this and doing it to a high level, and I was really sought after and one of the only people doing it. So my mistake is, like, I should have just thrown everything, because I didn't want to say I look down on it, but I was just seeing, like, as a musician, this is just one of the things that you do. Like, you do this, you play in shows, you play in sessions, you like just being a session musician. But this is my niche as the Jewish, like, pianist, Jewish keys player or whatever. My mistake is not, like, just taking it by the balls and just, like, running with it.
Yeah,
that's what I would say. What would you say is your biggest mistake, Serge? I don't think you made any mistakes. I think you've done. You smashed it. Like, look at how you've done. I mean,
no, I think listen, we're all human beings, so we all make mistakes, and I think for me, whilst I'm a person that I always like to do the right thing, or I am also human. I also sometimes probably say things I shouldn't say, or sometimes I can be a bit too honest with my opinions, and can sometimes upset people with my very kind of I'm very forthright and very listen, I'm from Manchester. I kind of I say things as they are. I'm very straight down the middle. What you see is what you get, and I don't shirk away from saying what I feel, or wear my heart on my sleeve. And I think sometimes that can sometimes not get me into trouble, but sometimes maybe I could probably be a bit more PC at times. I would say so. I should probably sometimes toe the line a bit more and just play the game, or whatever people want to call it, as opposed to making my feelings known.
You got to be yourself as well, though, right?
Yeah, correct.
So lastly, just to finish up, do you use any specific tools or apps that help manage your businesses?
I don't have any fancy CRM. I just use Trello sometimes, but now I'm just using genuinely, I'm using an Excel sheet. I think I should use Gigio. I don't really have any fancy tools. Literally, I mean, I've got my keyboard, my Nord Stage 4, my Nord Piano 5, my Korg PA4. I've got those gears, but not fancy tools. I know Serge has got like a fancy CRM, but
yeah, I guess for me, I'm a big believer in making sure that whatever you do in life, you have the best tools to do whatever you need to do. Don't skimp and go cheap. Always push yourself to buy the best ears for your IAMs, or if you're editing your content, find the best app to edit your content. Don't skimp on things. Like for me, I have a really good CRM which I put all my gigs into, and it sends contracts out of, and customers can accept it online, and or have all my T's and C's on there, and I have a really good WordPress website. I've spent a lot of time on that, making sure it looks good, and again, also with the content that I put out, make sure the content's really high quality, making sure that you're spending time on the audio, and making sure the audio sounds good, and just kind of really making things look as best as they possibly can do, and also operating as smooth and as professionally as you can.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, guys, this has been really fun. Really enjoyed it. It's been really interesting learning about this niche.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
So yeah, just lastly, if anyone wanted to connect with you or learn more about you, where would you send them?
On Instagram, I'm Josh Plays the Piano. So it's easy.
Nice. Yeah, and I'm Serge, SERGE, Music Official.
Nice. Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on and chatting to me, guys.
No, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Thanks, Jack.
Thanks, Jack.
So there we go. I really hope you enjoyed that episode. I just want to say a massive thank you again to Josh and Serge for coming on and chatting to me. That's it for this one. Take it easy, and I'll catch you next week for episode 15.